Hi, and welcome to the Virgin River Cafe Rewatch podcast. Good morning, Gigi. Happy weekend.
Happy weekend, my friend. How's it going?
Oh, it's going. It's going pretty good. Finally
Good,
got
good.
some rain. I know you've had rain for days, but we
Uh,
finally got some.
no, it feels like Noah's Ark for a minute here.
Oh
And
no.
they're not done yet,
I
so we'll
know.
see.
Yeah.
I'm not complaining. We need
No.
it because,
It's nice.
you
I
know,
like the rain. We just don't get to see it very often. It's
well, that too, but we in California don't do well with water from the sky.
I know. I know there was somebody posted something the first day that it rained because it literally we're in the month of February right now for us because I don't know when people are listening, but it has not rained more than, and they even figured it out, like 0.19 inches since May. That's how much
Wow.
rain we've had since May. That's like a really long time with no rain. I know a lot of people, it rains all the time and thunderstorms and they're constantly, no, not here.
Not
Not
here.
here. And then it rained for 2 days, and then we're gonna get a couple days break, and then we're supposed to get like 3 or 4 more days the end of the week. So I'm kind of excited about that.
Yeah.
And the weather's been cold. It's been nice. I like change of season. I know here in Southern California we don't get much change of season, but it's enough because it feels colder. It's you have to wear a jacket. It's kind of nice. I like that.
It's it, it's cool weather. Let's
Yes.
put it that way.
Yeah. So what are you drinking today? What's your caffeinated beverage?
My caffeinated beverage today, because I'm feeling a little under the weather.
Uh-oh.
I'm gonna go for my ginger tea. And basically it's me making my own ginger tea.
Ah.
So, I grate my ginger, I steep it. Um, it comes in pretty strong, which is what I like. I know it's not for everybody,
No,
but
not
it
unless I'm feeling nauseous, which, yeah. Nope. Or cooking.
no, but it helps. Yeah, that's true. It helps settle my stomach.
That's
My
true.
immune system starts to feel like it's starting to gear itself up. It's been, so I have a couple cups of that and I'm raring to go again. So that's what I'm having today.
Nice.
So,
I am having a
yes.
iced coffee, of course, even if it's cold out.
Mm-hmm.
I'm having a
Yes. Mm.
brown sugar iced coffee.
All right.
So I'm taking a break from my cinnamon dolce, and which it's just
Yes.
sort of like it's like brown sugar's like cinnamon dolce adjacent because it's still in the family. I like to keep it in the family. I just like cinnamon brown. It's just good. Cinnamon, brown sugar. It's like yummy.
Hey, to each his own, I say. I don't have to drink it, so I'm not worried about it.
So here we are. We are forging ahead with season 4. We're getting
Mm-hmm.
through it. So
It's getting good, ladies and gentlemen. It's getting good.
are you ready? Let's get started.
We are in season 4, episode 3, Grilled.
This one starts off. The description says Mel plans a dinner for Cameron to meet Jack, but plans go awry. Yeah, they do. Connie warns Lizzie to be careful with Denny. And Preacher befriends his aikido teacher. Oh
All
my.
right.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
So here we go. Now this episode, because usually we start out with a little bit of scenery, and the only scenery we've got is the evening, which from the last episode when we left our friends in Virgin River, Jack had brought his dad home for dinner, and they seem to be getting along. It looks like they may have buried the hatchet, and good thing it wasn't in each other's heads because that could have been.
Yeah.
They had dinner, and because Mel's pregnant secretly, Jack's like, "I'll finish up. You go sit down and rest." And they had a nice dinner. It looks like Bree probably didn't make it. Hard to say. We never saw her. She was still dealing with Brady at the
Right.
hospital. And so our
She,
first shot.
she was bullying. She
Oh
was
yeah.
bullying a 6+ foot
Yeah, she
security
was.
guard.
She's a little firecracker, that one. The first scenery shot we have is a really cool shot of like sunset over the cabin, which I hope I get a chance to go to Vancouver and actually get to see the actual cabin, which of course it's not going to look anything like they make it look on TV because I think
Nope.
it's used in many things. It's been used in like Supernatural, I think. It was used in a couple episodes of Stargate, I believe. And there's a bunch of shows that have used it. It used to be it was like someone lived there that worked the land. And since then, I guess they call Vancouver Hollywood North. It's been purchased and now is used as like a set. Obviously, Virgin River has claims on it for 4 months out of the year, or longer if they have to get it ready for filming. They've claimed it for that amount of time, but I know it's used in other things. It's been used in other things. So, but it's just a really cool shot of like, sort of like a drone shot of the lake with the cabin in the background. So
not a bad place to work.
No, not at all. So the evening is Mel and Jack. It's so domestic, these two. They have just fallen right into domestic living. They're doing dishes, which is like she's washing and he's drying and putting away. And they're just having a chat over putting away and it's just so funny. She's like barefoot and he's just like, just kind of like they're hanging out, just finishing cleaning up after the evening. And they continue the conversation of the bomb that his dad dropped, that the mom wants a divorce. It's like, what? Yeah, because he looked astonished. Like, are you kidding me? Like, what? Yeah. So Mel says, I don't know why you're surprised. And he is like, no way, divorce is mom's idea. Because in his view, now remember, he hadn't lived there in 20 years, so Bree probably has a better take on the situation. But the mom adored the dad. Always, he was her everything. So it just seems ludicrous that she would want a divorce. That it's got to be. And Mel's like, well, why not? And Jack's like, yeah, she worships him. And so his rationale is, yeah, I guarantee if it was her idea, it's because he's a narcissist. Now, because of course that's obviously the reason, of course. Because he thinks his dad's kind of a narcissist anyway, and this would just like fit right with the plan. Like, this is just who he is, and he's always been that way. So yeah, of course that's the reason. Like, let's just blame it on him. Now, this is like probably the second or third time that Mel takes a step back. Let's look at the whole picture. Let's not jump to conclusions. We don't have all the information. Like, she's very much like, let's not believe the first thing we hear. Let's get supporting information. And she's very much like, she's like, there must be more to the story. And she's like, why do you think it's his fault? Like, automatically you're blaming your dad. Like, I'm not saying it's your mom, but I'm not saying it's your dad either. And I'm saying you don't know enough to know enough at this point. Yeah. And
well, Jack is prejudiced, I think.
Also, totally.
Because he's coming from one point of view that from when he left home till whenever.
Yeah, and he's always on his mom's side.
Right. And for him, it's just like, okay,
it must be him.
It must be dad.
Yeah. It can't, in his mind, it can't be anything else. Like, there's no reason it would be anything else. And he's like, well, why are you defending my dad? And she's like, I'm not trying to. And she's like, look, all I'm saying is there might be another explanation. You don't know, you just don't know about it yet. And his thing is like, well, I'm not going to hold my breath. He's so self-deprecating. He's like, I hope this apple fell far from the tree. And then, because she doesn't let things go, she calls everybody on their everything. Because he's like, maybe you dodged a bullet. And she's like, what does that mean? And he's like, well, I never got a chance to finish my proposal, and now you've got time, you can think about it, whether or not you want to be married or not. And she's like, Jack, we both agreed to postpone the proposal and just focus on the pregnancy. And he's like, yeah, I know. She's like, I didn't want to overwhelm you. He goes, oh yeah, I was overwhelmed. Like, he doesn't have enough. He goes, but you're not your dad. She's like, okay, well, whether or not you ask me to marry you, you're stuck with me. And he's like, what? He's like, forever? He goes, yeah, well, that works both ways. You're going to be stuck with me too. And she's like, I wouldn't have it any other way. And as she's doing that, she's got her arms around him and she's kissing him. It's very cute. Very cute. All the dimples, all the kissing. And he's like, are you okay? And she's like, yeah. She's like, I'm just stressed. She goes, well, you're pretty cute. I'm all riled up. She's like, well, you're pretty cute when you're riled up. And he goes, oh, I thought you were tired. And she's like, well, lucky for you, I got a second wind. And then, of course, the clothes start coming off. She takes his shirt off, and he's done this throughout the show. He takes her shirt off with one left hand almost every time. Like, if it's a T-shirt, one left hand, and there it goes. So they wind up on the bed, and very cute. And then they go to the fire. romance is happening here.
It's a great fireplace. That's all I could say.
Here in Virgin River. Okay, so of course we have a scenery shot because you can't. It's sort of like the first scene, then the commercial break, and then the next scene. This is sort of our commercial break. It's just a scenery shot. So we've got Bree and Mel running. The two of them just running. It's so funny because Alex Breckenridge does not like to run. I mean, I don't think she doesn't mind it, but I don't think it's something she does on a regular basis. So she's always like, I hope they don't make me run too far for too long, but that's her character's thing. She's a runner. So they stop at she's like, okay, 3-mile mark. And they kind of stop and they're looking and they're all a little out of breath. And like, what's your pace? She goes, 11 minutes. She goes, oh, really? That's slow? And then Mel almost lets the cat out of the bag. She's like, I know, but Jack is worried that I'm still running. She goes, so I told him I would pull back. And she's like, why is he worried about you running? She's like, oh, oops, and she got to come up with something. She goes, oh, I get shin splints. And Bree's like, got it. So she covered that up. And she's like, well, thanks for letting me tag along. She goes, I didn't really feel like running alone this morning. And, it was a pleasant surprise when you called. I mean, these two, they're thrown together because, one is related to and one is with the same guy. And there are very few women the same age. So it sort of fits that they hang out together. But it's just sort of like the beginning. It's like we're watching the beginning of their friendship on the show, which is cool.
Yep.
So she's like, please come with me anytime. And, this is fun and we'll have to do it again. And so Bree's got to run and she's like, Jack's waiting for me at the bar. And Mel is like, but wait, I wanted to say that I'm really sorry about what's going on with your parents. And Bree's like, yeah, it's a shock. Like, I thought they were solid. She's like, well, if Mel, if you need anything at all, I'm here to help. And she's like, you need to remind my brother how lucky he is to have you. So they say their goodbyes. And then Cameron runs into Mel.
Oh, boy.
Oh, I know. It's like, oh, Cameron. And the thing is, when they introduced her and him, they didn't say, this is Mel, she's with Jack. This is Mel, she's pregnant. This is Mel. They've been pining for each other and finally got together recently. Like, nobody knows anything. As far as he knows, he doesn't see a ring. She's a single lady, right? He's got no reason to think anything different.
Nope.
He hasn't been there that long. I don't know if Jack's come around, showing up, bringing her lunch, giving her a kiss. I mean, we don't know any of that.
All I know is that Beyonce's song's ringing in my...
I when as soon as the words came out of my mouth, I thought the same thing. Now, he probably knows by now because he's been there a minute and Lord knows nothing in Virgin River stays quiet.
Yeah, that's pretty much true.
But he maybe hasn't seen it, hasn't experienced it, maybe hasn't been around it, thinks, maybe there's a chance, or I'm just going to unrequited love and, admire from afar, whatever. We'll see. So Cameron rolls up and he's like, how's it going? And she's like, good. She goes, oh, just finished my second loop. And he's like, yeah. He goes, wow, I'm doing my third right now. She's like, seriously? He's like, Scout's honor. He goes, I might actually do a fourth. She goes, wow, you're trying to show me up? He goes, actually, I'm trying to get yesterday out of my head, the whole stillborn thing. He's like, I've had patients die, but never a baby. So that was tough for him. And he's like, I got the labs back and I rushed them and it was a blood clot in the placenta and, with no prenatal care. And in this situation, nothing could have prevented it. And Mel's like, well, I'll call the parents and I'll let them know. And she's like, if you need to clear your head or whatever, take your time. It's fine. He goes, no, I think I'll feel better just being around people. And she's like, oh, I was going to mention maybe you might want to have dinner with me and Jack sometime. And he's like, yeah, how about tonight? I could barbecue. And she's like, he goes, unless you can't, that's fine. And she goes, no, we could have dinner. Yeah, that should be okay. She's a little apprehensive. Like, that was awful quick. She's like, sometime. And he's like, how about tonight? Oh, Cameron. She's like, no, we'd love to. He goes, well, why don't you check with Jack and let me know? She's like,
that's what he should have done to begin with.
Yeah.
Say, can you check with Jack when it's a good time? And then, but don't
ask and then say check with Jack. But whatever. It's Cameron. whatever. He's like, well, let me know around 6. And she goes, okay, well, I'll make blueberry crumble. And he's like, wow, superhuman at work and you bake? I mean, he's just the full of compliments. She's like, well, it's the only thing I know how to bake, and I haven't made it in years. So it might be bad. He goes, yeah, right. It probably won't be good. She's like, probably not. And he's like, all right, I bet it'll be awesome. See you tonight. She's like, yeah, okay. Bye. Like awkward. Like he's just awkward. Oh, that guy. Cameron. He needs to find his own friends. There's not a lot to choose from, so.
That I was now about to say.
Not people that he would vibe with. That's the thing. He's sort of an interesting person, but he just doesn't, he hasn't vibed with anybody yet, but his time will come. So we're at the bar and Bree shows up because she's supposed to meet Jack. And they're like, hey. So he's like, did Dad leave? And she's like, yeah, a few hours ago. And he goes, so what did he say? And Bree's like, he said Mom wants to travel and he can't because of work. And Jack's like, that's ridiculous. She's like, I know. I mean, because Bree lived there. Remember, she visited them. She was in town. I mean, she was only in Sacramento. So she was like close to them and she would, he had said.
Right. And also the fact that she had dinner with them almost every weekend.
Right. And, several times a week. Yeah, exactly. So she kind of knows how they are now. And Bree's like, the problem is they can't live alone. And Jack's kind of looking at her like, huh? And he's like, why not? He goes, well, they're getting older. And if they're alone, they're going to need help. And she's like, did you know Mom can't drive at night? She won't even touch the ATM because she doesn't trust computers. And Dad, last time Mom went to the mall, Dad made pasta and left the gas on. If I hadn't stopped by, he would have blown up the house. He's like, you're going to have to stop this. She's like, me? He's like, you're the golden child. She's like, no, I am not the golden child. He goes, oh, please.
I love this argument because it sounds so familiar in my family. Who's the golden child? Who's not the golden child?
Yeah.
Who gets to tell each parent something?
Yep.
I feel that pressure right
Yep.
there.
Yep.
But it's so funny when they say that.
Well, and Jack's like, yeah, and if they sent out one of those newsletters, he goes, I don't even think I'd be mentioned. And she's like, you think Mom would let that happen? You're the prince. He's like, yeah, we got to do something. And she's like, otherwise, I'm going to have to live with Dad and you're going to be living with Mom. And he's like, oh, Christ, yeah, we got to treat this like an emergency. Like, seriously, they got to fix this. He goes, okay, you deal with Mom. She's like, you deal with Mom and I'll figure out how to deal with Dad. It's like divide and conquer. He goes, after I meet with Valerie. And he's like, what? He goes, oh, I'm signing my contract today. And he's like, yay. And he gives her a big hug. That's fantastic. That means she took the job. That means you're going to be here for a year. She goes, unless you piss me off. He goes, well, that's great. And I'm really happy that you're staying. He goes, but there's one favor I need from you. You don't want to hear this, but be careful with Brady. Okay. And she's like, oh, he goes, he has a habit of attracting trouble. We already know that.
Oh, Lord. That's Brady's first name.
Yeah. And it needs to be said because she thinks she knows Brady and maybe she sees a different side of him, but he still attracts trouble.
Oh, yeah. He's a bad boy. There's no getting around. Okay. And that, I think, is the edge that she likes.
That's exactly what. Are you kidding? That's where the fire comes from.
Exactly. And the thing about it, because she's used to the straight and narrow guys to some extent, except for the jerk,
Yeah.
The last jerk. But if you look at, what's his name? Who's the police officer? Mike. You look at Mike. He's straight and narrow.
Oh, yes. Very predictable, very stable.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing about Brady is there's nothing predictable about Brady.
Nope.
Absolutely nothing.
He's kind of a loose cannon.
Just when you think he's just going to go left, he goes right.
Yeah.
So it's just the nature of who Brady, and that's what I think attracts her to him. That's it. So
exactly. So she's like, look, I don't even know where Brady and I stand, but whatever happens, I can take care of myself. Mm-hmm. He goes, I know. I just don't want you to take any unnecessary risks. She's like, fine. Then I need to ask you a favor. And he's like, what? He goes, will you talk to Mike? Find out if he'll help out with the case.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, sure. I can't guarantee he's going to cooperate, but she goes, well, do what I do and don't take no for an answer. He goes, you got your stubborn streak from Dad, you know? She's like, well, you got your hair from Mom. Want to trade? He goes, no, never. The two of them. They're so funny.
It's got the good
Yep.
hair. Got the good hair.
Oh, my. So Jack calls his mom, and he's like, hi, Mom, it's Jack. Will you give me a call when you get this? Because now he's got to get down figuring out what's going on.
Right. He's got to see if what his dad said is correct.
Yeah, exactly. So we're back at the clinic, and Mel is calling the couple that had the twins, the one that had the stillborn. And she's like, hi, Ben, did you and Lee get my message? And he's like, yeah, I did. And Lee's inside with Iris. They're both sleeping. And he goes, I just wanted you to know there's nothing you could have done to prevent the blood clot. And he's like, okay. And she's like, I'm so sorry. I hope that knowing helps. And he's like, people keep saying they're sorry, but it doesn't change anything. And she's like, I know, you're right. There's no words. He goes, it's like somebody sliced open my heart. And she's like, I understand. Not little does he know that she really, really does. She even says, I really do. He doesn't know why she understands, but she's like, I just want you to know that I'm here if you ever need anything. And he's like, thank you. But nothing's going to bring Daisy back. So it's very sad. I mean, she can only do so much. So we're back at the bar, and Preacher is talking to Connie. The two of them are having a little powwow in the kitchen. And he's like,
right, the floors.
Oh my goodness. Yes. The detectives are on the case. And he's like, what are you doing? And she's like, well, I didn't want anyone to overhear. And she's like, this whole Christopher thing, has your detective found anything? And he's like, no, not yet, but I'm really trying to stay positive. And she's like, I've said this before, but I feel like I let you down. So we don't really know what happened. All we know is that they came home with pizza, and Vince was sitting in the dark, and he walks into the kitchen, and all of a sudden Christopher's gone. And what's her name? Sally kept Preacher busy. He clearly made it out alive. He didn't end up, in the forest floor for a week.
Right.
But Christopher, we don't know how that interaction happened with Connie and Christopher and Vince.
Yeah. Well, we know now that because the reason why Preacher ended up on the forest floor is because he wanted to take Christopher.
Right. But
so the only way he could do that is if Preacher was out of commission.
Right. But we don't know how that interaction happened with Christopher because they didn't show it. So this is like Connie's account because she feels really bad. She feels like she did something wrong. She feels like she could have done something else. I mean, she's an older lady. I mean, what was she going to do, And so this is like, I feel like this is like their first talk after that happened. Because she's like, I said it before, but I feel like I let you down. When I saw Vince, maybe I should have grabbed a weapon or a kitchen knife. And he's like, Connie, none of this is your fault. I mean, if you had done that, he may have hurt you and Christopher. You made the right decision by cooperating. And no matter how much she knows that intellectually, it's like she's going to feel guilty. She's like, yeah, I know, but it doesn't feel like it. Like she knows she did the right thing, but it doesn't feel like she feels like she should have or could have done more, even though she probably couldn't. And it was probably better that she didn't. He's just consoling her. He is like 3 heads taller than her. They're like, I'm so worried. But yeah, he gives her a hug. She could only do so much. It's just sad.
Yeah, well.
So we're out in the front of the bar. Cameron walks in and hey, I'm Dr. Hayek. I put an order for takeout. Now, I don't think Jack and Cameron have met yet. This may be their first interaction. He's got to size up his competition, right?
Yep.
He goes, oh, you're Cameron. He goes, yeah, have we met? And he's like, I'm Jack Sheridan. You work with Mel, right? And he goes, right. He goes, oh, been looking forward to meeting with you. He goes, oh, yeah. My patient said that you were the glue that holds this town together. He goes, well, I don't know about that. And he goes, you got a cool setup here. He goes, thanks. We're pretty happy with it. He goes, hey, Preach, come meet Dr. Hayek. Hey. He goes, Cameron. He goes, Preacher, good to meet you. He goes, let me get that order for you. So Jack asks him, he's like, how are you liking it here? He goes, oh, it's exceeded my expectations. Everyone in town has been so great, especially Mel. She's incredible. He goes, oh, yeah. She's one of a kind now. You could tell the look on his face. He's like, she's incredible, right? Uh-huh. My incredible. Not your incredible. She's my incredible. Like, hopefully we don't have to have a pissing contest. Like, seriously.
Oh no, it's a silent pissing contest. Please take note, because look at the look on Jack's face, basically going, "That's my woman. Back it up, buddy."
Yeah, you better keep your hands off.
Exactly. So no, it's a pissing competition, not a full blown one, but he is letting him know he is. That look on Jack's face is basically saying,
Well,
you need to go in other pastures.
Cameron's a little oblivious or just dumb. I'm not sure which, but he is just like, doesn't faze him. Like he's got to dig himself just a little deeper. He's like, I lucked out because I've worked with some real assholes. And Jack's like, he goes, overall, people are really good to one another and sense of community. And he goes, well, why don't you fill me in tonight? And he's like, why? What's tonight? And he goes, oh, I invited you and Mel over for a barbecue, at Joellen's. And he's like, well, thanks, but I don't think the B&B has a working grill. And he's like, so the one on the back patio? He goes, no, that's purely ornamental. He goes, Joellen's been nagging Nick to buy her a new one. He's like, oh, he goes, well, that's too bad. And Preacher gives him his lunch, and he's like, well, we can barbecue at our place at the cabin. And he goes, well, it's not going to put you out. He goes, no, not at all. I'll grab steaks from the back. And he goes, are you sure? He's absolutely, sounds good. See you tonight. It's like, thank you. And he's just kind of looking at him like, this is going to be interesting.
Tell me about it.
So now we're in the park, and we've got the bakery truck, and Lizzie and Connie are working together. How nice. So Connie's asking Lizzie, so what else did Denny say? Because everybody's wondering, Denny is Doc's grandson? So Lizzie further explains, she's like, his grandma and Doc dated when Doc was in college and she got pregnant. She broke up with Doc, never told him about the baby. And the baby is Denny's dad? She's like, yeah. He goes, wonder why he's here. Well, he wants to get to know his grandfather. She goes, oh, Lizzie, so naive. There's always a motive. She's like, oh, you watch way too much true crime. And then, of course, all the town ladies have their opinions. So she's like, well, Joellen thinks Denny's after an inheritance. Personally, I think he's planning to blackmail Doc. And Lizzie's like, blackmail him for what? For keeping his love child secret. Oh, my gosh. So Lizzie's like, Doc introduced him as his grandson. So there goes that theory. Gosh. Oh, my gosh. She goes, listen, Doc is like family, and we have to protect him. She's very stern. She goes, if you notice anything strange, let me know. She goes, the only thing strange is you accusing an innocent guy of fraud. She goes, honey, my instincts about people are never wrong. You mark my words. This kid is up to something.
Well, I have to say, her instincts have been pretty right on so far. So
I know they have.
I think with being traumatized as a child, I think she's very aware of people and circumstances.
Exactly. So. Okay, here we are back at the clinic. And Doc is thinking, working, sitting at his desk. Oh, he looked up the obituary for his son so we could see what he looked like. And you can see a resemblance. Yeah. I mean, if you said, could this guy be this guy's son? Yeah, you could see that.
It's so sad.
I know. I mean, just, and he's reading all about him. And the phone rings and it's Hope. And she's like, I'm making hermit cookies. She's in the kitchen. She's got all the baking stuff out. And she's like, and I can't remember how many eggs I'm supposed to use. And he's like, and how would I know? And she's like, well, you've seen me make it like 1,000,000 times. And he's like, I've eaten them plenty, but I don't think I've ever watched you make them. She's like, well, I knew you'd be no help. I'll text Connie. He goes, no, I'll Google it for you. And she's like, why would you do that? I'll text Connie. And he goes, no, don't. I'll Google it for you. He goes, well, why would you do that? She goes, oh, Connie, once she starts texting, she won't stop. And they both kind of start laughing, which is so true. He goes, well, why did you leave so early? He goes, well, I had some work to catch up on. And, are you okay on your own for a few hours? And she's like, well, I want you to think of me as a cat. And he's like, well, what does that mean? Because it means I have zero interest in socialization, and all I need is access to food and water and the human version of a litter box. And he's like, well, can I scratch behind your ears? He goes, not unless I'm in the mood. He goes, oh, well, that's very cat-like. He goes, I need to talk to you tonight. She goes, can't you tell me now? He goes, no, I don't want to talk about it on the phone. He goes, good Lord, you're frustrating. And then there's a knock at the door. She gets a little squeamish when she sees that. She's like, oh my gosh, it's like Grand Central Station over here. He goes, would you answer the door, please? Connie had Marge drop off groceries and I don't want them left out. She goes, fine, but I'm not inviting anybody in. Goodbye. So she opens the door and it's Tara. She's like, hi, can I come in? She's very like apprehensive, but she feels like she needs to.
But the thing is, she's getting back to herself because the
snarky, yes,
yeah, is coming back. She's answering as quick as somebody gives her an answer.
Yeah.
So she's getting back to the Hope we know and love.
Yes, I believe that too. Yes. So we are back at the bakery truck. Looks like Denny. She's like, hi, can I get a chocolate donut? She's like, sure. Anything else? He's like, wondering if you want to go to a movie tonight. He's like, the Light Road is showing Pulp Fiction. She goes, I love that movie, but I'm filling in at the bar and won't get off until 9. He goes, perfect. The last show's at 10. She goes, oh, count me in. He goes, just text me when you're done work. And Connie was sort of peeking in on the side. And just as
Connie, I swear to God, the woman is like a ninja.
She's a tiny. Ricky called her on it. She's a tiny ninja. As soon as Lizzie turns around, Connie's like right there. She goes, remember what I said. Keep an eye on that boy. And she just kind of gives her the evil eye and walks away. It's like, calm down. Oh, goodness. So now we're at Hope's. And Tara's like, I know the deer got into your giant Darwins. And she goes, so she brought her something. She goes, thank you. Some of my best memories of helping you and my mom in the garden. She goes, you're a natural, just like Lily. It's just so awkward because they don't know what to say to each other. I mean, she insulted her and she doesn't want to make Hope feel bad, but it's like these women represent her mom. So she like needs to be close to them. And so Hope's like, I just wanted to say I'm sorry about yesterday. And she's like, you don't have anything to be sorry for. She goes, I'm the one who owes you an apology. I was caught off guard. And she goes, you look just like Lily when she was your age. She goes, and every time I look at you, she like is practically in tears, poor Hope. She goes, I miss her so much. And Tara's like, I miss her too. She goes, I hope you'll forgive me. She goes, of course I do. She goes, I wish I could forgive myself for being away during these last few weeks. She goes, there's nothing that you could have done to keep her from leaving us. She goes, but I didn't get to say goodbye. She goes, Mom knew how much you loved her. That's all that she needed. She's like, I know how you feel. And she goes, you do? And she goes, yeah, when my dad died, I hadn't spoken to him in like a month. And she's like, and it's not for any good reason, just because I was busy. And she goes, and not being able to say goodbye still hurts. She goes, you're the closest thing I have to my mom. I can't lose you both. So Hope just is overwhelmed. She gets up, she sits down next to her, and she goes, it's been so hard not having her around, and I know you've been through a lot, but I really need you, Hope. She goes, oh, honey, I'm right here. And big hugs, which is really sweet, because they needed to do this.
Well, and also what's good to know at this point is that we now know how long Lily has known Hope. So it seems like Hope also has grown up.
Oh, yeah. Well, so she's been there at least 20 years, because I think when she married Doc, that's when she moved to Virgin River, because I don't think she's from there.
Okay. Well, because I'm thinking...
It's 25 years. 25 years.
Because what? If Lily's daughter is what? How old do you estimate she is?
Mid-20s.
Okay, so she's in her mid-20s, and you add another...
And Doc delivered her.
Right. So, okay, so it means that it's got to be a really long time. It's got to be over 25 years since...
It's probably close to that, yeah, because Doc's had his practice for 30. He moved there with his practice, and we don't know if they were together. They were probably together before they got married, because they've been married for 20 years. Or it's been 20 years since they got separated, and then they were married for 5 years or so. Right. So, yeah, it could be they moved there together 30 years ago.
Yeah. Anyway,
that would make sense.
Because I'm trying to figure out how long has Lily known Hope?
She
And
probably met her when she moved to town.
right,
Now,
and
if they do the spin-off that they're planning, which is the story of Mel's parents, and I'm not going to say anymore because I don't do spoilers. I'm just going to leave it at that. The story of Mel's parents, they're in the works to do a spin-off. When they showed some flashbacks of that time during the season 6 that just came out, like we saw a little bit of Connie, we saw people. So we'll know in the 70s if some of those people were around at that time. That's 50 years ago. We don't, maybe it'll show who was there that long ago. I don't think Hope was, but Doc, I don't even know if Doc was, but I know Connie was because she was in that flashback. So we know she's been there forever. So it's interesting. We're gonna see. We'll see. So we are back at the clinic, and it looks like Nick hurt himself. He hurt his wrist. And she's like, I want you to continue icing it for the rest of the day. He looks like he's got a brace on his right wrist. And she's like, and then take it easy for about a week. And he's like, all right. And I can write you a note. And he's so funny. She's like, otherwise, Joellen won't believe me. He goes, and let's just say that I can't run the vacuum cleaner. She's like, okay, for like 2 weeks? He goes, is that good enough? She goes, oh, you're an angel sent from heaven. Oh, my God.
This tongue is so funny.
I know. Goodness. So Doc is in the kitchen. He's standing over the sink, kind of looking out the window, looking a little distraught. And Mel walks in. And she's like, Nick just left. She goes, thanks for seeing him. How's his wrist? She goes, oh, just a light sprain. He's fine. He's like, he did say something interesting, though. He said that your grandson is visiting. And Doc's like, oh, he did. Did he? And he's like, well, yes, it is true. She goes, oh, sorry, I didn't know you had any children. And he's like, I didn't either. He goes, and neither does Hope. Given the speed with which news travels around here, that could be a problem. She goes, if it was a secret, how did Nick find out? And he's like, it's not exactly a secret. I introduced Denny to Lizzie, the town, but Connie overheard. Right, so she told Joellen, who told Nick, and you hit the nail on the head. Oh my gosh. It's just...
Love this stuff. I swear to God, these people are just precious. I swear to God. And the thing about it is, I can relate to this so well because when you live on an island and you live in a town or a small village, you seriously do not need a telephone. You do not need a telephone.
You don't. You don't.
Because the news travels so fast.
Yeah.
Because I can tell you this, if something happened to me as a teenager or as a kid, and by the time I got home,
that everybody knew. Yep.
Everybody knew. And basically, the look on my parents' face basically...
You walk in the door and you're like...
I'm screwed.
Yeah.
I'm totally screwed. Because whatever my sins are, and basically, it's now been amplified by several other people.
Oh, yeah. Because you played telephone before. The end is never the beginning.
Exactly. So I so understand.
Well,
anyway,
funny you should say that because when I was little, my friend Tammy, who lived 3 blocks away, she's like my sister from another mother. Our moms were best friends. And we used to test them because our parents were like their own little circle. The two of them, if you told one thing, the other would find out in a second. They couldn't hold a secret to save their lives. Well, we would make up a story. And we would tell our mom, and we would see how long it would take for that mom to tell the other mom to get back to them. And I mean, and it was true. It was like an hour. It would be like the next day.
Yeah, it didn't take long.
No.
It did not. You're lucky. There was nothing in my neighborhood that was the next day. It was that day, honey. There was no next day.
Well, you could hear them. We'd say something, and then 5 minutes later, they'd be on the phone with the other one. It's like,
yeah.
I didn't even leave the room yet. You're already dialing. Like, seriously? Oh, small
Oh,
towns. Small towns.
yes.
So,
Anyway,
so Mel's like, you better tell Hope fast if you want her to hear it from you first.
mhm.
Goodness. She goes, well, I'm going to try tonight. He's like, I just, it's hard
Doc
to find
does
the right
this
time.
all. You see, I hate
Yeah,
this about Doc
I know.
because this is how he got into this predicament with the whole Lily thing.
Yep.
Okay, the thing
Well,
is,
yeah, but
no,
Lily told him
I
not to say.
I understand that, but the point is, it's still a situation where he puts it. And the thing is, it's not like you have to drive 5 miles.
Yeah.
Hope's living down the street. Get your ass up and go and tell her, because the point about it is, and he already knows that she's been getting a lot of
If
visitors. You
Joellen
don't have
stops
to
by, Tara could be telling her right now for all we know.
exactly get the shit out of the way.
Yeah, no.
I swear the man procrastinates as badly as I do.
As direct as Mel is, Doc is indirect. Like,
oh my God, it's just like,
it's frustrating.
Get your shit together.
I know.
It's
I
like,
know.
because then he gets upset when she gets upset with him. Well, then don't let that happen.
Yeah, well, old dog, new tricks, not happening. Right?
Yes. But he's his own worst enemy, as I like to say about certain teenagers in our lives.
Yep. Mm-hmm. I hear you loud and clear, my friend. So Doc, I mean, also, he's still, like he says, he's still processing the fact that he even had a son. Like, he's in his 70s, and he just found out he had a son.
I get that. But I think the thing with him is that he's got to understand that know the information is out there. You can't do that.
I know.
Your community is too tight knit to let shit like this slide. And I think that's my bone of contention with the people.
No,
in this
I
town.
agree. I agree.
Oh, I'll wait for it.
They all need to face it, and they all beat around the bush, and then it winds up blowing up in their face, and then they wonder what happened. Gee, I don't know.
Exactly. You don't live in the city. This is not a city life you're living.
Yeah.
You're living in a small town.
People don't have anything to do, so they're going to be in your business.
Exactly. And as you said, what the what is it? The
internet is slow, but the gossip is fast.
Gossip is fast. Mm-hmm. And that nobody does that better than Virgin River, honey.
Yep. So Doc is like, yeah, I'm still trying to process that I had a son, and Mel catches the had, and she's like, had? Because, yeah, he died about a month ago from a heart attack. It's like, oh my God, he was so close. She goes, oh, Doc, I'm so sorry. He goes, I gained a son and lost him in the blink of an eye. That's heartbreaking. She goes, and it's silly because I'm missing something that I never had. And then here's Mel, because she's been through everything. The most empathetic person you'd ever want to meet can help him understand this in a way that she understands. And she gets it. She's like, no, that's not silly. He became a part of you the second you knew he existed. And he goes, but I didn't know him. She's like, I think that it's what could have been. What could have been that makes it so hard. And he's like, what could have been? She goes, that I had a stillborn daughter, right? And he's like, yeah. And she goes, I never got to look at her eyes. She goes, I never got to hear her voice, but I miss her every single day. He goes, I think there's some things that you just never get over, and losing a child is one of them. She's like, and then delivering Daisy and having to see her parents' heartache. And Mel's starting to cry. She's like, it just brought everything back. And he grabs her a tissue. And she's like, thank you. And he goes, I can't imagine how hard that must have been for you. Grief doesn't ever get lighter. We just get used to carrying the bags. It's like, you've lost a lot of people in your life. And she's like, too many. He goes, listen, personal issues are not my forte, but I am around if you need to talk. And she's like, thank you, Doc. That's really sweet. And she's like, wait a minute. She goes, I'm supposed to be comforting you, not the other way around. She's like, friends don't keep score. He's very sweet. She's like, thanks. So they've really solidified their father-daughter type relationship. Yep.
They have.
Yeah. God, they've come so far. I mean, I really enjoyed them arguing and fighting. That was hilarious. But this is very sweet. This is very sweet. So here we are at the little Virgin River Farmers Market, and Preacher's
Oh.
looking for some stuff, and he sees his aikido teacher. He goes, Julia? She's like, Preacher? He goes, I took your aikido class. She goes, yes, of course. And I figured out where I've seen you. I've eaten at Jack's bar. He goes, oh, and how was it? He goes, oh, it was delicious. Have you been here before? He goes, oh, yeah, this is where I get a lot of my perishable items. She's like, oh, it's my first time. She goes, I decided to eat more local and organic, and, I just didn't know where to start. And she's like, I take it the artichokes are good, because that's what he's picking up and holding. He's like, oh, yeah, my artichoke dip is a favorite at the bar. She goes, and what do you call a conversation between two artichokes? And he's like, and she's like, a heart to heart. He's like, oh, wow. He goes, oh, I can't believe I said that out loud. He's like, no, it's cute. He goes, I love a good arted joke. No, these two need to stop. Just stop. He goes, so where do you want to start? Fruits, vegetables? So they're just kind of perusing through. And he goes, they have wine. He goes, oh, Then why are we standing here? He goes, follow me. So there's definitely a little attraction going on there. So here we are at the DA's office, and Bree is coming in. She's chatting it up with someone, and she peeks in, and she's like, hey, thanks for seeing me. They must know each other because they hug. And she goes, well, if it wasn't for you, I would have failed civil procedure. So they must have gone to college together. How nice. And she goes, Wilkinson was a real prick. She goes, he was. Now have a seat. Goodness. Tell it like it is, girls. Tell it like it is. Goodness.
Oh, boy.
She goes, so, Bree says to her, so how do you like being an agent? And she's like, it suits me. She goes, yeah? She goes, still working in the DA's office? She goes, well, I took a job at a small law firm in Humboldt County. She goes, oh, so that's why you're here. She goes, sort of. She goes, I have a favor to ask. She's like, shoot. She goes, I need to see the Emerald Lumber file. She goes, a friend of mine has been framed for attempted murder, and the key to that is somewhere in your file. She goes, the DEA poured a lot of time and money into that raid because we wanted convictions, and we didn't get them. She goes, yeah, that task force had way too many cooks in the kitchen. She goes, DEA, AFT, FBI, Humboldt Sheriff, all of them. No way to know who tipped Calvin off in time for him to destroy the evidence. So if you know all this, why do you need the file? She goes, I need your notes. She goes, so I can see that case through your eyes. She goes, Bree, no, I could lose my job. She goes, an innocent man could end up serving life in prison. She goes, Daniel Brady? That's the friend you're trying to protect, right? And she's looking at her like, mm-hmm.
Now, this is the first time we know his full name. I have not heard his name. All we've known.
Oh, you didn't know? Yeah,
Brady.
they've said it before. They've.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
very, very. It's like you have to pay attention. You'll totally miss it.
Please, I don't have that kind of detail. Like
I know. Yeah, I know. I knew that though. And in the book he was Daniel Brady.
Okay.
They did mention it when I think when they were bringing in the search warrant. I think they said Daniel Brady. We have a warrant for blah blah blah.
All right.
But those are little details. Nobody calls him Daniel. I mean, if you say Daniel, he'd be like, who?
Exactly.
Because that's not who anybody knows him as. So she's looking at her and she's like, God, I just hope you know what you're doing, Bree. So she gets the computer going. She's like 24 hours. She goes, and don't show it to another soul. And she's like, I owe you one. So she puts it on a thumb drive and she hands it to her. And she's like, you do. Like, you owe me.
Ah, yes. The lawyer friends.
Mm-hmm. And Bree's like, you're doing the right thing. She's like, yeah, I wonder.
She's like, I don't know about this, girlfriend.
Yeah. So now we see Lizzie. We're at the bar. She's in the kitchen. And Ricky's like, hey, what are you doing here? She goes, oh, preacher asked me to fill in for Hannah. And he's like, so how are you? He's like, fine. What do you need me to do? And he's like, well, if you want to serve, I can bus. I know how much dirty dishes gross you out. She goes, nothing's more disgusting. She goes, well, what about a blobfish. Now let's start naming gross things. That's yuck. So Ricky's like, hey, so I've been memorizing my lines for the Romeo and Juliet scene. The fair's coming up, and I was wondering if you want to go together to practice. And she's like, yeah, I don't think we should. He goes, I thought you were into performing. She goes, I was, but I changed my mind. He's like, Lizzie, I know I hurt you, but I'm really sorry. And I swear I'll never lie to you again. She goes, I don't feel like it. He goes, why don't you give me a second chance? He goes, because I trusted you and you lied to me over and over. I said I was sorry. What else can I do? She's like, nothing. Like, she's done. She goes, maybe someday I'll forgive you, but not right now. I think he thought by saying he's sorry, that would be it.
Yeah, girl is not easily persuaded as far as that's
No,
concerned.
I think she's done enough of that. She's starting to really grow up.
Yeah, even with the last boyfriend, she basically
sent him on his way.
Yeah, exactly. So he's not one to mess with as far as that's concerned.
So Mel is on her way to the grocery store because remember, she's supposed to make blueberry crumble or something. So she's on the phone while she's driving and she's like, yes, from scratch. I'm going to pick up blueberries and brown sugar. And she's on the phone with Jack. And she goes, he's like, I'm happy to get stuff from Connie's. And she's like, it's okay, babe. I got it. And he goes, well, as long as you're up for it. And she's funny. This is funny. She's like, I am. He goes, just please don't take too long because I don't know this guy. She's like, that's literally the point. It's to get to know him. It's like, Jack. She's like, Jack, I'm making a crumble and a human being simultaneously. I'm sure you can survive one barbecue. So true.
Nope.
So he's like, all right, love you too. And off she goes. So it seems that the farmer's market shopping trip that Preacher and Julia were on has now turned into let's have some wine, let's have some lunch. So they're getting to know each other. Who's like, and I'm the youngest, and oh, this wine is good, and they're just having a little chat. He's like, no wonder you got into martial arts, because she's the youngest of like 5 brothers or something. Mm-hmm. And they didn't want their weakling sister, so she said she had to, as soon as she learned how to drop her oldest brother, everybody else left her alone. So she had to fight and be tough with all the older brothers in her life. And he's like, oh yeah. She goes, and your other job, you're a recruiter, right? And she's like, I specialize in medical staffing. He goes, wow, it sounds interesting. She's like, yeah, it's like a puzzle. Somewhere there's a piece missing, and my job is to find it. I used to love doing puzzles. She's like, used to? He goes, yeah, well, once I finished active duty, it took me a while to get back into normal life. So before I found a job, I would do puzzles. It just kind of kept me busy. She's like, I read that a lot of veterans feel out of place when they come home. He goes, well, one day you're fighting in a war zone, and a few days later you're standing in line buying groceries. It's surreal. She's like, were you bitter fighting in the war? She goes, no, I chose to enlist. And when I came back from Iraq in one piece, I chose to live with gratitude instead of anger. She's like, that's beautiful. Gratitude is one of the basic tenets of life. He goes, yes, and one of the reasons I decided to try it. So she wants to know when he's coming back to class, and he's like, I don't know. She's like, I feel like a BFG, big friendly giant. She goes, oh, the Roald Dog character, nice. She goes, well, I do private lessons. He's like, oh, is that so? She goes, I'd give you a friends to family rate. He goes, oh, that's quite an offer. I'd be a fool to refuse. She goes, and you're definitely not a fool. And cheers to that. And it's like, okay, you two, really? So we're at the hospital, and Brady is looking a lot better. He is looking a lot better. And some gentleman walks in, and he goes, Dan Brady? And he's like, yeah, who are you? Bondsman, congratulations, you made bail. And the sheriff is right there. He gives him a piece of paper, and he goes, what? How? He goes, note the conditions of release. Number 1, surrender your passport. 2, don't leave the state. Doesn't say who posted my bail. As long as the check clears, I don't care. He goes, so that's it? I'm free to go? He goes, don't screw me. If you're a no-show, you're in trouble. He goes, relax, I'll be there. So he signs away his papers, and the guy walks out, And he's done. He's free. Well, technically free. So he's looking at the paper. It doesn't say who posted his bail. It was probably a big chunk of money.
Oh, yeah. Because he's accused of attempted murder.
Well, but remember, he didn't do it.
Well, yes, but I mean, before the court doesn't know that.
At the time, yes. I think it was $500,000.
Okay.
So that would have been like $50,000. That's a lot of money. So Mel pulls up at the grocery store, and as she's getting out, there's this older gentleman pushing his cart. He looks very confused. He's just kind of standing there, very confused. And she walks by him like, "Hey, are you okay?" And he's like, "Carl can't find his car." She goes, "Okay, who's Carl?" He goes, "I am." She's like, "Okay, Carl, my name is Mel. Are you here by yourself?" He goes, I can't find my car." He's okay. Why don't we go to this bench over here, and then I'll help you find your car. And she's slowly walking him. She goes, "Carl, do you have anyone that I can call for you?" And he's like, "No, I live alone." And she goes, "Do you have any relatives close by?" And he's like, "I have a daughter." And she's like, "Okay." And then poor Carl goes down.
Oh, like a
lot. Yep. And she's like, "Carl," and it's like people are all gathering around. She grabs her phone. She's checking his pulse. She goes, 911, what's your emergency? She goes, "I need paramedics at Swinson's Food Market in Clear River. I have an elderly man unconscious and unresponsive. Nearest unit is 15 minutes out, ma'am." It's like, oh, geez. She goes, "I've lost his pulse. I'm starting check compression." So she's going to do CPR. Oh, my goodness. Like, can she just go to the grocery store? No.
Nope.
Gotta save a life.
And don't you know, the universe sends you this, you gotta do something about it.
Gotta do something. So, back at the cabin, now remember, Cameron's coming over for dinner because they're gonna barbecue. And Jack and Cameron are sitting out on the Adirondack chairs looking over the lake, chilling together. This should be fun. So Jack's like, "Do you want a beer?" Because it's like, what's he going to talk to this guy? He goes, "Wine, I got whiskey, water." He's like, "Oh, water would be great." They're just going to sit there. Jack grabs a beer because you know what? For him, alcohol's the answer. It's a little trend we start seeing, and if you start noticing it throughout, his go-to is always beer or whiskey or something. He starts to drink a little bit more, and that will become a theme later. So the two of them are just going to sit there and enjoy each other's company, so to speak. So he asks how long he's been in Virgin River, and he's like, 7 years. He's like, "Oh." And before that, he's like, "Sacramento." He goes, "Oh, you go to Davis?" And Jack's like, "No." He goes, "Yeah, I did my undergrad at Berkeley." He goes, "Small world, almost went there." Because remember, Jack got a full scholarship to Berkeley. And he's like, "Where did you end up?" And Jack's like, "The Marines." And Cameron's like, "I grew up in an ultra-liberal household. My parents would have lost their minds if I had enlisted." And Jack's like, "Yeah, mine weren't thrilled." I mean, his dad, right?
Yep.
Oh my gosh, his dad was not happy. He goes, "Mine weren't thrilled." And he's like, "Yeah." He goes, "Who could blame them? Sending kids overseas to fight for oil?" He goes, "Yeah, I mean, that's a bit of an oversimplification. It's a little cynical, don't you think?" And so then it's like, oh, the tension. He goes, "Yeah, maybe." He goes, "I guess we'll have to agree to disagree on that one." Hey, he's like, "Hey, look, I mean no disrespect." He goes, "Nope. I totally admire people willing to put their lives in danger for something they believe in." He goes, "Enlisted folks do that every single day, you know." And Cameron's like, "Yeah, exactly." Jack is like, "Oh my God, Mel, please come home." He's so like carefully but not noticing, checking his watch, but not like making it obvious. Because he looks around like, "Where's her car? Do you hear her? Is she coming yet? Like, I want to call her. How much longer are you gonna be?" Like, seriously, he's like, "I'm so done with this guy." Like, so done with this guy. And clearly time has passed, and Mel is finally home. But she has no bags with her. She's like, "Hey, sorry I'm late." She goes, "Is Cameron here?" He goes, "Yeah, he's inside. He's mashing potatoes." She goes, nice job with the table. He's like, thanks. He goes, want to know what I've learned about me and Cameron? He goes, what? He goes, him and I have nothing in common. And she's like, I'm sure that's not true. He goes, I swear, I tried, okay? He's like, I did. She goes, really? He's like, yes. And he's like, are you okay? You were gone a while. And she's like, ugh, it's just this older man had an episode outside the store, ended up having to give him CPR. I waited for them to come get him into the ambulance. It was so sad. He was all alone. He didn't have anyone to call. And he goes, oh, you look like you need a hug. And he gives her a nice big hug. And then Cameron shows up. It's like, duh, Cameron. He walks up with steaks. She goes, sorry I'm late. There was a little emergency at the grocery store. He goes, is everybody okay? She goes, the medical response was fast, so I think he's going to be fine, but I forgot all the stuff to make the crumble. He goes, oh, so you chose to save a life instead of making us dessert. Selfish. He goes, let me put those things on the grill and you guys can talk. And Cameron's like, no, I got it. So she's going to go get some lemonade. And Jack's like, no, let me get it. You guys talk. Like,
he's like, I don't want to spend any more time around this guy.
Oh my gosh. So as he's grabbing the lemonade for Mel, because he's such a lovely man, and this is overwhelming for him. I mean, he gets overwhelmed easily. He's never really learned how to deal with his stuff. And what does he do? He grabs a drink. So he gets his little glass and has some hard liquor, whiskey, rum, I don't know what that is. Takes a couple sips so he can steady himself to go deal with Cameron. I mean, I might need a drink if I was there dealing with Cameron. I might do the same. He's going to have a second because one is clearly not enough. And he downs it. I mean, that's like... And then his phone rings. And it's his mom. And that's going to be an interesting conversation.
Tell me about it.
So Mel and Cameron are having a chat while he's grilling the steaks. And he's explaining to her that his last job was a group practice in downtown San Diego. Not enough doctors to meet the demand. And she was like, yeah, let me guess. Back-to-back patients, no time for paperwork. He's like, oh, sounds like you've had the experience. She's like, well, yeah, I worked in ER, and the burnout rate was like 50%. And he goes, oh, yeah, that makes sense. He goes, that's what I love so much about this clinic. He goes, you're not feeling like you're being rushed. He goes, really? I thought you loved all the paperwork. It was crazy. I cannot believe they haven't been digitized yet. And she's like, oh, my God, trust me. I tried, but Doc freaked out on me. So the two of them are having a great conversation. She's like, yeah, trying to explain the cloud to Doc. It's like teaching a frog how to ride a bicycle. They're laughing and having a good time. He brings himself another beer and brings her lemonade. So Cameron comes up with the idea. He's like, well, why don't we go to him together and make our case? And she's like, well, I mean, we could try, but he's pretty set in his ways. He goes, yeah, but I have faith in us. She's like, okay. He goes, a couple of my patients were talking about the Overview Trail Run. And she goes, is that in Grace Valley? And she's like, yeah. He goes, have you heard of it? She goes, yeah, I've wanted to go. Just, I haven't made it up there yet. And he's like, oh, I've heard it's breathtaking. Do you want to go? Now, Jack's listening to this conversation. You're inviting my girlfriend?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think you're overstepping your bounds a little bit, sir. And Cameron's like, the trail's like 8 miles long. She's like, oh, yeah, well, he goes, I'm maybe good to go. And she's like, are you saying I'd have to carry you down? She's like, no, I'd pass out and then you'd have to call for help. She's like, oh, right, you're really selling this run. He goes, that's why I became a doctor and not a salesman. She's like, good choice. And Jack's like, the trail sounds fun. You're not a runner, Jack, no? And Jack is like, no, not my thing. I find it a little repetitive. I always start out and then I get bored. And Mel's like, I like repetition. I find it soothing. And he's like, yeah, I know. Cameron's like, I like it because, you know, you get into the groove and you kind of like lose yourself. And Jack's like, I like knowing where I am. And Mel's looking at the two of them like, okay, the pissing contest can stop now because they're being very subtle about it, but it's definitely happening. So Cameron's like, so what do you think? Do you want to go? And she's like, as long as you don't pass out, I'm in. And he's like, excellent. And another good news, the steaks are ready. And she's like, finally, shall we eat? And Mel's like, I'm starving. And the two of them walk to the table, leave Jack there. And he's like, oh, God, when is this going to be over? He just wants to be done. So it's the end of the night at the bar, and Lizzie is cleaning up, and she's like, are we almost finished? She goes, yeah, except for the lady who keeps sending her food back. He goes, well, when she refused to pay, I thought you were going to deck her. He's like, people who are rude to servers should not be allowed to come. So she's looking at her phone, and she's like, yeah, I know, I agree too. She's like, hey, are you okay to help Preacher close up? Because I got to go. Because remember, she's got a date for a... And he's like, sure, do you have a hot date? And she's like, maybe. Because remember, she's supposed to see a movie with Denny. Yeah. They decided to go... She gets off at 9, and they're supposed to see a 10 o'clock movie.
10 o'clock movie, yeah.
So we're back with Mel and Cameron and Jack.
And the torturous evening that seems
that just he's the gift that keeps on giving. So they're sitting at a table. They've got little twinkle lights everywhere. It's really nice. So how they have this little outside area, and they're just sitting around, just chatting. And so she finds out some information about him, because all the ladies in town want to know: is he married? Is he engaged? Does he have a girlfriend? Is he gay? Like, what's the situation with him? So she says, so you were engaged? And he's like, yeah. We broke it off a few months ago. And she's like, bummer. He goes, well, it was bound to happen because we're just from two different worlds. She grew up in a big family, 6 brothers and sisters outside of Philly. And I would think, she says, I would think seeing the world from someone else's point of view would make the relationship more interesting. So Cameron says, for some people, but not for us, it meant that we were just never on the same page. So he doesn't, he's not given all the information. He goes, I'd want to go out for a meal and she'd want to cook. Or she wants to watch movies and I want to go rock climbing. He goes, I don't know. I mean, does it sound like a deal breaker? He goes, yeah, it's not, but things just start piling up and then you realize you have totally different interests and values. To the point where we couldn't agree on what kind of eggs to buy. Then Jack starts laughing and they're like, oh yeah, like the time I brought home cage free instead of free range. And he's looking at Mel laughing and she's like, I had to explain to you that free range means they get to go outside. And he's like, well, I know that now. And Cameron's like, yeah, see? And he's like, I mean, could you imagine not agreeing on anything? And Cameron says, where you want to live, your finances, how many kids you want to have. It's exhausting. And Mel's like, well, at least you figured out your differences before you got married. And he's like, and for that, I'm grateful, because once you have kids, you're tied to that person, whether you're on the same page or not. Now, that is like a twofold realization, because Jack's having kids with with Charmaine. Mm-hmm. And now he's having a baby with Mel. So now he's going to be tied to these two women forever.
Yep.
And this is like, that was before there was a relationship, like tons of heavy relationship. I mean, yeah, with Mel, but they're not married yet. They're together. But,
yeah,
ooh, it's a touchy subject. It's like everyone's thinking and everybody's thinking and not knowing what the others are thinking. It's so funny. So we're over at Hope and Doc's. And they're sitting outside. Must be a really nice evening because everybody seems to be eating outside today. So Doc is sitting at that picnic table on the back porch, and Hope is bringing out something special. She's like, ta-da! She goes, they might taste terrible. He goes, oh, how enticing. So she's hovering over him while he gives it a little taste. He goes,
jeez.
Actually, they're delicious. She's like, oh, thank you. She was very, very worried. She goes, so what did you want to tell me?
Why didn't she taste it herself?
She probably did, but remember, she's got a TBI, a traumatic brain injury, and they said her taste buds might be off, and she can't trust herself yet. That will come in time, but right now, she needs a taste tester.
Doc, unfortunately, has volunteered.
And Doc's in for the life, so whatever. He's there. He's gonna do it. So he says to Hope, I'm just worried that I might upset you. Because remember, he has to tell her something. And it was driving her bananas that she had to wait. So now he's going to tell her. And he kind of takes a deep breath. And she's like, Vernon, you're driving me crazy. Out with it already. He's like, okay. He goes, I have a grandson. And she's like, what? He goes, a woman I dated in college had a baby and never told me. And that baby had a son, and his name is Denny Cutler. She goes, where does he live? In Seattle. And how did you find this out? He goes, Denny came to Virgin River a few days ago and he introduced himself. He's here and you're just telling me now? He goes, yes. I was nervous because it's from another relationship. And are you currently in a relationship with that woman? He goes, no, of course not. He goes, then it's in the past. He goes, she's like, I think it's amazing. He's like, you do? He goes, neither of us had children, or so I thought. And, well, there have been times that I regretted it. He goes, I never knew that. He goes, well, not at the time, but, it would have been nice to share it with a daughter or a son or whatever. He goes, to have a house filled with family, especially during the holidays. He goes, that's nuts. He goes, no, not at all. He goes, I've often thought the same thing. She goes, this could be our second chance. He goes, you really okay with this?
I swear, Hope surprises me at the most interesting time.
The thing you would think she would freak out about, she's... Her answer is, it's a blessing. It's like, okay. She goes, I'm so happy to hear you say that because I feel exactly the same way. She's like, oh my gosh. Okay, so now we get to have a little heart-to-heart with Mel and Jack. About this is like the debrief after dinner with Cameron. Because they needed one. So they're curled up together on the couch inside the cabin. The dinner is over. Cameron has now got home. And
thank God.
Yes. And she's like, thank you so much for tonight. She's like, you're a very gracious non-host. He's like, well, happy to accommodate. And so they're just she's laying on his chest. They're kind of playing with each other's fingers, just kind of talking. It's very cute. And he's like, well, he doesn't know how to cook steak. She's like, but he seems okay. And he's like, and he's definitely into you. And the furrow of her eyebrows is like, huh? Like, she's so oblivious. She goes, what? No, he's not. He goes, oh, come on. She goes, oh my gosh, Jack. He's a social guy and he's lonely here. And he's like, okay, that's fine. As long as you keep things strictly professional. She's like, wait a minute. And she literally sits up to look at him. Because this is how she's so in love with Jack. She doesn't even, it didn't even dawn on her that Cameron was even looking in her direction, which I find hilarious, so oblivious. She's like, do you ever think I would, and before she even gets the word cheat out, he's like, no, I'm not talking about you. And he's like, I trust you implicitly. She's like, okay. She goes, so where's this coming from? He goes, my mom called. So this is where we find out the truth behind the parents.
And this is why we were chugging down liquor.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Because my mom called while I was getting you lemonade. And what did she say? She goes, it turns out you were right. The divorce wasn't because of my dad. And she's like, she says she's in love with her art teacher. And Mel's like, seriously? And he's like, yeah. And they're both stunned, shooketh, right? She goes, how do you feel about that? He goes, honestly, I don't know. He goes, I never thought a million years that she'd even look at another guy. She goes, how did she sound? He goes, excited. He goes, it was weird, it was like talking to a complete stranger. And Mel's kind of sad for him because he had this image of his mom that now has been completely shattered. So it's kind of sad.
Yeah.
And then
you remember he hasn't lived to him for a long time. So this is a whole new woman for him.
And I mean, it's not like he hasn't kept in contact. It's just he hasn't been around her and been around his parents. He only knows of them what he remembers, which was a long time ago. So Mel's phone is sitting on the coffee table and it rings and it's the hospital. And she answers it and she's like, hello? And she's like, excuse me? Now, we are now back at Brady's place. Now, the last time we saw Brady's place, they showed up to do a search. And then he went to jail. And then he got stabbed. And then he went to the hospital. And now he's been released. So he's now home because he got released from bail. And his place is a mess. Because remember, they searched it.
Exactly. They basically threw everything they could throw on the ground. Yeah,
they tore that place up, unfortunately, which is a shame. I mean, he doesn't even, like, they cut into pillows thinking he's hiding drugs. So every surface is a mess. Every pillow is ripped open. At least he had a beer. He's sitting there drinking a beer, and there's a knock at the door. Now, he's very skeptical. He's very nervous. He grabs his baseball bat. And he's like, who is it? And it's Bree. And she's like, it's me. And he opens the door. And she's like, hey, I heard you made bail. And he's like, yeah. And he comes outside and he's looking around because he's skeptical. Like, are you alone? Who's with you? Did somebody follow you? He's like, yeah, I don't know how, but yeah. Because he has no idea how he got out. And she's like, well, could I come in? And he's like, Bree. He's like, I'm sorry, but it's not a great time. She's like, why not? And he's like, Bree, and she's like, hey. And then she kisses him. And he's kind of like standing there like, ugh, hold on. They do the long stairs and the, just like Mel and Jack did. She's like, I just need to know that you're okay. And he goes like, what if I'm not? She goes, I want to fix it. And then they play this song, and he closes his eyes like, I can't, if I keep my eyes open and look at you, we're going to go down a path. And then he puts his hands on her. He puts his hands on her arms and her shoulders, and she puts her hands on his shoulders. And they just can't not. And then he kisses her. And that's like the end of it. And they a lot of chemistry, a lot of passion. He's backing her up into the place. Probably kicked the door shut because, that's a thing. There goes her jacket.
This is the bad boy chemistry thing.
Oh, yeah. And then she's unbuttoning his shirt. And she takes his shirt off. And then she stops and sees where he got stabbed because he's got a bandage on it. And she's like, does it hurt? He's like, no, not enough to stop. Kisses her again. And there they go. He does this thing where, and I don't know if it's like he always like hovers over her with like one straight arm. Just, I don't know. It's a Brady thing. He always does that. But yeah.
All I could say, it's a horizontal mambo. Let's move on.
There we go. That's how we're going to end it.
Yes, we are.
Yep. So they're trying to make up. They're trying to make up here. But
yes.
We don't know. I mean, they're not going to talk about it because he still lied. And yeah, he wasn't lying, but he lied about other things. And can they move past that? I don't know. It's a tough situation. It's like she wants to trust him,
Very
but
patchy.
Yeah, she wants to trust him, but can she really? Hard
Probably
to say.
not, but...
Hard to say.
But you see, the attraction is there, and that's the problem.
So much. The chemistry and
the chemistry is there.
Yeah.
She knows she's not supposed to love this boy.
Yeah, he's a bad boy.
But,
she's been warned. She's been warned.
Oh yeah. But you see, the heart wants what the heart wants. And to hell with everything else.
Yep.
So that's what's going on here. People.
That's where we're at these days. Oh my.
Anyway, folks.
Well, there you go. So much is going on. So now we've got Denny, which we've got a few people that are happy he's in town and a few people that are skeptical he's in town. And Cameron, who I think the jury's still out on him. Seems like a nice guy. I don't know if he'll try and make moves on Mel. I mean, it's clear she's with someone. But he seems a little clueless to that. Like, he doesn't seem to care. Like, he's just going to be there anyway. I'm gonna wind up being her best friend. Like, that's sort of the vibe I'm getting from him. That he wants to weasel in as, like, her buddy. I'm not sure. I don't know about him. Not sure about him. But we'll see. We shall see.
I remember when Mel first came there and she knew how Charmaine had felt about Jack.
Yes.
As far as... And he was clueless.
Yes.
I think Mel is having that same sort of clueless moment when it comes to Cameron.
Well, she doesn't see him as anything but a nice guy working there. Yeah.
Exactly. So that's, I think it's now so interesting. It's like reverse now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, she's not looking at him in that way, so she's not seeing it at all. Like her heart, what is it they say? The heart emoji eyes are all over Jack. And she doesn't see anybody else in that way at all. Like, he's just a guy I work with. Like, yeah, he's fine. Like, he's cool. He's social. He's fine. He's just lonely. He's just, he's cool. So I guess we're going to have to see how that pans itself out. Oof. My. All right. Well, another episode. Yep.
Au
We
revoir, folks. Thank you for coming by.
thank you so much for stopping in, pulling up a chair, having some coffee with us, having some tea, enjoying a little Virgin River with us. We hope you've enjoyed it. We're just going to keep going, working our way through season 4, and we'll be back next time with another episode. All right. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Take care.